Welcome to this episode of One More Round, and I have the brain behind the one-year project, Brianna Zajicek. How are you today, Brianna?
I'm very well. Thank you so much, Mark, for introducing me and having me on your show.
Absolutely. Now, I literally have to just say your surname about 30 times in my head before I said it. I probably won't try and attempt to say it again since I think I did a good job.
Yes, you did great.
It sounds like it's from like the Czech Republic or Croatia. Is it around that sort of area?
Yes. My husband is Czechoslovakian.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, good job.
It's amazing. I can only ever put my ability to know a nationality based on somebody's surname from my misspent youth of spending hours on a soccer game called Championship Manager, where you literally just play for hours and hours. But I have this great ability now to be able to take somebody's surname and know kind of what area they're from.
Yeah, good. It's a good skill to have, a good conversation starter.
Absolutely. Now, Brianna, I would love to know, who are you? Like, often people say what it is they do, but who are you as a person?
Awesome question. I actually have been wrangling with this myself lately. As a person, I would say I'm a person with an insane knack to overcome obstacles and to turn dreams into reality in a very, very short time period. I think that's my history and my story, so to speak. And as far as the person I'm becoming, I see myself as someone who is goal-oriented, mission-oriented, and looking to make a large impact on this world and really just help other people to shine their light a little bit brighter, and helping people realize what it means to design a life they love and design a business that's aligned with who they are. And I think those are all very at the core of me, along with my perpetual optimism, which has been serving me well.
Very good. So sounds like you've really kind of pivoted through life and you've really looked at who you are and how you can then take who you are and throw it into everything that you do.
Absolutely. I think that the one unique thing I have is that I'm me, that I've been through this path that other people haven't been through, that I've had these experiences that other people haven't had, that no one's lived my life. And at the same time, no one's come to the same understanding of life that I have. And I think that's part of my magic.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think once you're in sync with your journey and you know who you are and you're comfortable in your own skin, that's when life becomes exciting. Brianna, what is one word that you want the world to pin to you and to say, this is the word that I associate with Brianna?
Oh, that's a good question. One word that I want the world to recognize me by.
Mm-hmm.
I think creator. I think that's the one word. I want to be known that I created something. Not just participated, not just served, but actually created.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I find that a lot of people are quite passive, but there's nothing more fulfilling than actually driving, creating and building something. So I love that word. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Brianna, what makes you happy? I read over your bio, and I know that we'll probably touch on this at some point, but it was clear that what you thought was success, you ended up achieving and realized actually you still were not fulfilled. So
Yes.
what does make you happy?
I think what makes me happy is obviously the act of creation, which I think we've covered, but taking humans in some aspect and helping them to see their own potential and helping to bring out the potential that we all have, helping people to see themselves differently. Those are some things which genuinely make me happy. And from a personal standpoint and how I operate within myself, I love to journal. I love a good conversation. I love dancing. I love to read a good book, meditation. Those are all very things that help me stay grounded and happy and maybe more of my self-care practice.
Like it. I'm glad you mentioned book, because I always think it's a great question to ask everybody. But what would be the one book that you kind of would encourage people to go and read? And what would be the one business tool or app that you really have gleaned a lot of help, from?
Sure. So as far as a book, I'm going to give one that probably you wouldn't think is traditionally a business book. And that would be The One Thing. And The One Thing is a book about how picking just one thing and one focus and a hyper amount of focus, removing the multitasking, really transforms the results that you achieve. And I'm a huge believer in one thing, whether that's one conversation and one focus and not being on your email and in a conversation and talking to someone else, but really just the entire concept of insane focus, things that, is very hard in this digital age. I think that's my book.
Cool. And what about an app or a business tool?
An app or a business tool? It's funny because I come from a technology background. I've built and sold technology companies, and I've been an AI PhD student, and researcher. And so looking at those two things, you would assume I'm very technology driven, but I don't think that there's an app that makes my business any different or my life any different. The ones I use the most are probably the simplest ones, which maybe speaks to my own philosophy of keeping things simple. And so I just use the built-in notes on my iPhone to keep track of thoughts. And, we all have those little moments where there's like this speech in our head and we're saying it to ourselves. And so all those little moments, all those little ideas, no matter how crazy, no matter how big, no matter how small, I just keep in my notes on my phone. And so it's probably not the best business hack or the fanciest application that you can use. But for me, it's all about keeping it simple and using technology almost as sparingly as possible without sacrificing results.
Yeah, so it's clear that journaling, getting your thoughts down, is a big part of, I guess, your own creativity, making sure that you don't lose, so sometimes we can park things and then we can connect the dots. I take a lot of notes when I'm producing like these daily videos that I do on Instagram, just giving you an idea of something that you can kind of trail ahead to a different thought or idea. So I get that. Brianna, I always believe that where people spend their money reveals a whole lot about someone. What do you spend your money on?
Oh, depends on if you're asking the old Brianna or the new Brianna. I would say the old Brianna spent her money in a lot of fun ways that were good for her time. So I used to be the person on the yacht with the champagne and traveling the world in a 5-star hotel. So I think that was my old way. And I think my new way is radical investment into my life's work. And so the business I'm building now is unlike the businesses I've built in the past, in that it's my life work. And the amount of investment and the amount of sacrifice I'm willing to put into it is also at a completely different level than anything else I've ever done. And as of right now, I'm at least 100% investment, if not more. So for every dollar I've made, I've invested that same amount back into my business in some way, if not more.
Mm. It's interesting, isn't it, how when we're on a journey of success, there's certain things that we think are going to fulfill us. But I think it was Tony Robbins who said that success without fulfillment is ultimate.
It's the greatest failure. Yeah.
Which I think is a great reminder.
It is. It is. Very true.
In the film Cranford, it says speculation is the enemy of calm. With all the snow that we had over the UK last week, I was destined to fly out to Oslo in Norway. My concern was the fact that there was so much snow that it was concerning me that I wasn't going to make it. I'm not the greatest traveller anyway, but it reminded me, this quote, of the fact that sometimes we allow speculation, things that could or may not happen, alter our own state of calm. So it's a reminder that speculation is the enemy of calm. So let's not be disturbed by what or may or if, but only really deal with the true facts and put our energy into the things that we can really influence and change.
Right, the show's called One More Round. I always like to throw this out there, but when you hear the words one more round, what comes to mind for you, Brianna?
Besides a great scene from Rocky, when I think one more round, I think about people who have learned that success does not lie in the winning, but it learns in the falling down. And that the people who win aren't the people who are better at winning. The people who win are the people who are better at standing back up. The people who don't stay down, the people who don't wallow in their story, who don't wallow in the circumstances, who know that they have a power to come back and to do life again, to make another decision, to make another choice, and to really define their destiny.
Love that. Love that. So for you, you know, because you've been through so much, you've been through starting off, you know, on the cusp of child poverty, being homeless, to then creating a 6-figure business that then turned to 7, 8 figures. You had the whole lifestyle of drinking and eating strawberries on a yacht, and decided actually that doesn't fulfill me. So tell us a little bit about your one more round, an occasion, a personal story where literally life, you know, smacked you on your backside, and how you came back and why. Why did you come back?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, you mentioned, and I'll go briefly through my history as quickly as possible. I grew up very poor, and I always thought the answer to all of my problems was to get rich. And so as soon as I could, I went and tried to become rich, failed at first, went to college early on a full scholarship, trying to ditch my small town and make it, ended up a teen mom, ended up, you know, married at a very young age, ended up, you know, in a series of downturns, dropping out of college. And then there was one turnaround after another. I went from being a server at a restaurant and, you know, living in a tiny, crappy apartment to buying my first house and making 6 figures in just a few months. And I went from that to building 7-figure company, 8-figure company, went from that to starting my own company and selling it and doing that over and over again. And then I got to this point in my life not too long ago, a few years back, where I pretty much had everything I'd ever wanted. I finally had a loving relationship. I had the great house. I had the great cars. I traveled the world. And I was looking for something more. And so I thought the answer to that something more was to go and get a PhD. And so I went, started my PhD program, and I was building an algorithm to predict if entrepreneurs will be successful, which I really loved and was passionate about that work. But the issue that I had was I woke up one day and it was like, I didn't want to answer the emails for the companies that I'd built. I didn't want to go to class for the program I had, you know, spent months trying to get into. I just didn't want to wake up and live my life. And so that was a point to where it's like, well, what's the answer? Because I have the money, I have the education, I have the love, I have everything I've ever wanted, and I still don't feel happy, I don't feel successful, and I don't feel fulfilled. So now what? And my one more round came in the form of, in the middle of the night, after all this had happened, around the same time, my son was diagnosed with cancer. And so in the middle of the night, during all of this, I opened up PowerPoint and I titled it Brianna Zajicek's Life. And I said, okay, if I stripped away all of the stuff, if I stripped away all the things I thought would make me happy, what do I think would really make me happy? Let's start with who I really think I am. And I created this PowerPoint presentation, Brianna Zajicek's Life. And I woke my husband up in the middle of the night and I said, hey, babe, look at this. And he's like, what's that? It's a crappy PowerPoint. And I was like, no, it's more than that. And I was like, give me 1 year. And so my one more round was giving myself 1 year where I figured out, who am I? What kind of life do I want to live? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? And how do I design a life and a business that's aligned with who I really am? And I gave myself 1 year to just do anything I wanted, to chase the feelings that I wanted, the happiness feelings, the success feelings, the knowing who I was.
Beautiful. So what happens now then when you're faced with like a challenge, something comes your way, kind of knocks you off course? Do you do some practical things? Is there anything that you do in order to be able to pivot through these challenges?
I'd say on a daily basis, if there's, we all have these things where it's like you get frustrated, you get stressed, you get pissed off in the middle of the day. I have some go-to resources, which are very simple, but like I've just kind of built myself into this program where if I'm in the middle of the day and I'm stressed out, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm any of those negative emotions that we typically think of, I have a go-to Spotify playlist, and I'll just jam the music as high as I can. And until I can actually get into the groove and like dance and feel the happy feelings, the happy thoughts, I don't cut the playlist off. So I give myself permission to stop in the middle of everything at any moment and to take a moment to get back to feeling good. And so there's never an extended time period where I stay in a bad place. I may momentarily feel stressed. I may momentarily feel, all of these things that we feel throughout the day, sad, angry, frustrated, resentful, whatever those negative feelings are. And I immediately switch myself out of that within a couple of songs. And I think we spend so much time staying in those places. And because I don't allow myself to stay in those places, it doesn't matter how bad the situation, it doesn't matter what I find out, I never stay in that place.
Love that. I think one of the things that really stood out for me is your ability to give yourself permission. People almost feel like they can't have a negative emotion, that you got to get rid of it. But I find it interesting. You're kind of saying like embrace it, kind of work through it, and then let it go.
If you can't recognize it, and if in recognizing it you add guilt and judgment, then you're just going to snowball deeper into this because you're feeling guilty for having the bad thought, and that brings another bad thought, and it just snowballs out of control. As we're taking back control and saying, you know what, I'm pissed off right now, I'm frustrated right now, I'm stressed out right now, I'm overwhelmed, I'm lost, whatever it is, but I'm going to completely not focus on that feeling. I'm going to acknowledge it exists, not focus on it, and focus on what feels good.
Yeah, I think that's great. I always find it interesting to hear how other people deal with, situations when it goes wrong. One of the things I'll just throw out there is if something does go wrong, I literally set a 10-minute alarm on my phone. And I sulk and I cry and I shout and I do whatever I need to do to express that. And then once that alarm goes off, that's it. We're done with it, And
yeah, sometimes it's like in the fully feeling it that you get over it. When you try to not feel it, when you try to push it down, when you try to hide it, it then bubbles up because it needs to be felt, it needs to be acknowledged, it needs to be addressed. And so I think that's a great tactic as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what we're wanting to do, is to create, a show where it's engaging, where it's real, where it shows people's real heart and their story, but also shares some really practical implementation of the things that people like me and you do in order to be able to deal with, life, because it's hard and it's tough out there, but equally it's fun and it's exciting.
Sure.
We've got to do whatever we can to keep going.
Yeah, I love that. A lot of people focus on the theory. The theory is that you should acknowledge your feelings. But the thing about this show is it tells you, what does that mean? How do people acknowledge their feelings? And those little tactics can bring so much light to the action side of things, not just the theory or the mindset of it.
Mm-hmm. I know that you are now fully embarked on this project, this brain initiative around the 1-year project. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think I told you guys a bit earlier about how I gave myself 1 year. Mm-hmm. So initially I said, you know what, I'm going to give myself 1 year to design a life I love, to figure out who I am, to design a business I love, so that I wake up every day wanting to live a life that I've made for myself. So that's how it started. And I decided to document my journey, share it somewhat on social media, and it kind of morphed from there. There was a point where I realized this is my life's work, and that my entire history, my entire path until now was that I knew how to make rapid, massive transformations, overcoming any obstacle that seemed impossible in a very short time frame. So who goes from a server to making 6 figures in a couple of months, right? That's a huge transformation. Who goes from making 6 figures to, an 8-figure company? Not very many people. And so I knew that was a talent I had, a gift I had, was in turning dreams to reality, and to always believing and to seeing a strategy and to seeing a way out. into solving problems. And then I also knew that I really was passionate about entrepreneurship. I was very passionate about being who you really are. And I was very passionate around the work I'd done as a researcher, which was predicting if an entrepreneur will or will not be successful, which helped me identify the patterns of success. And so I said, how do I turn this into a set of actions that people can implement? So there's all sorts of people out there who are like, you need to believe in yourself. You need to dream big. Okay, cool. But what happens when you do believe in yourself? What happens when you do dream big and you wake up tomorrow and you don't know how to accomplish those dreams? You don't know what to do to get there. And so what I really focus on is how do you design the life that you love and a business that supports who you are and the life that you love, and achieve it in 1 year by taking action every day and knowing what action to take every day to get you where you want to be, to get you one step closer to those dreams becoming reality. And so the 1 year project is a movement and a challenge to everyone out there to take 1 year where their life is by design, where they take action daily. And it's a system that I've developed that helps people know what actions to take so that they can radically transform their life in just 1 year.
Nice. So what does that look like practically? Is it like module based? Is it interactive?
So practically, it's something that, one, you can just believe in and get behind and try to execute on your own. But if you want to use the science of success and everything that I've learned so far by working with tons of people, then I have a free course. And that free course guides you through how to launch your own 1 year project. It's completely free because I want to create a mass movement of people who decide to start their own 1 year project and they document the journey. Another practical point of it is I have a podcast called the 1 Year Project Podcast. And in that podcast, I interview people who've radically transformed their life in just 1 year or their business in just 1 year. So you can see what it really looks like to do that and get inspired and get motivated and know what's possible. And then I also have a hot seat section where I take people who want to change their life in 1 year and I talk them through their, where they are and where they want to be and how they're going to get there. So those are some of the more practical ways that you can engage with the 1 year project. And I'm really just looking to help people become more of who they are and achieve those things that are out there for them.
Love that. One thing about your story about being a server, I was a server myself, and I wonder how much of that ability to serve has helped us, I guess, not take advantage of smaller things, but equally has helped with how we communicate with others.
Sure. I mean, I think if you can deal with someone getting the wrong food, if you can deal with someone being disappointed, if you can deal with mistakes, if you can deal with things taking longer, and you can learn to communicate through challenges, that's going to be a skill that serves you in all aspects of life. If you can learn to read people, if you can learn to tell their needs before they vocalize their needs, there's a lot more that goes into this seemingly simple job than just, showing up with drinks and napkins.
Mm-hmm. One thing I can glean from you already is your ability to reflect. When you think of personal development, it's the biggest weapon of personal growth is your ability to reflect, and how you are able to articulate the things that you learn and then share that, is beautiful. I think that's
awesome. Thank
really
you so much. Yeah, I'm inward thinking in a lot of aspects, but I'm outward acting. Yeah. So for everything I think inward, I take an action outward.
Like
and it's been working well for me. So
I'm just intrigued. You obviously built an algorithm to see whether an entrepreneur would be successful or not. Could you share some patterns of what that may look like?
Sure, and it's actually very aligned with your one more round. And so there was a question: are entrepreneurs born, or can they be made? And of course, there are people who we think are natural born entrepreneurs. But then that begs the question, all these universities, all these accelerators, these incubators are trying to teach people who have an idea to be an entrepreneur. And what I learned in some aspect was that it's not the knowledge or the strategy or the tactics that actually turn someone into an entrepreneur, it's the mindset. And so entrepreneurs, the average entrepreneur, who's successful as an entrepreneur is successful on their 11th business. So you're talking about one more round. They get up for one more round 10 times before they see massive success. So I think, the mindset and knowing that the battle is not in learning how to build a business and build it correctly. In fact, almost being naive can be a strategy and a strength, but the battle is in never giving up. The battle is in picking the right company to build. The battle is in learning to follow your intuition. It's all an internal battle of how do you think? And can you learn to think like an entrepreneur? Can you learn to stay cool going through insane risk, insane challenges? And so some of the things we looked at were someone's propensity to take risk. Were they risk adverse or were they risk tolerant? And how do you take someone who's risk adverse and turn them into risk tolerant? How do you change their mindset? And that's really at the core of being an entrepreneur, is there is an entrepreneurial mindset to success. And can you take whatever mindset you have right now and turn it into that winning mindset?
Like that, like it. Interesting. Why do you think then, Brianna, that for some it takes 10, 11 rounds and for others they can nail it in one?
Well, I think most people don't nail it in one. If they say they nail it in one, then usually there have been a lot of little failures that led up to that one. And so, I was following someone the other day who basically claimed to be an overnight success in some sense. And then I looked up their Instagrams and I found out that they'd have like 7 or 8 Instagrams. And so before they had their one overnight first time success, they tried an MLM. They had tried to go to college and do something. They had had a job before that. They tried to be an influencer and do the fitness videos. So sure, that might have been their first legalized business, but their efforts before getting there, they'd learned how to sell online before. They'd learned how to be an influencer before. And so I think that it's rarely that simple. And even if you look at something like as big as Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook, when he started out, it was Face Smash, right? It was something different. And so you could say his first thing was successful, or you could say all of those places that he went wrong led up to the ultimate Facebook we know now, which is the success.
Awesome. Brianna, how do people find out more about you? How do they interact and
Yes, I would love to. So on Apple Podcasts, on Google Play, you can find me as the 1 Year Project podcast. And that is a podcast launched June 1st, 2018. So if you look before then, you won't find it. But if you look after then, you will find it. And besides that, I have a group on Facebook. It's the 1 Year Project, Design Your Dream Life. Go and join that group, and everything you need about the free courses inside that group, everything you need to know about how to get in touch with me and even to chat with me personally, you can find inside that group as well. Follow me on Instagram. I'm at the 1 Year.
Awesome. It's been great to have you on this episode of One More Round. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you for having me and look forward to watching.
Awesome. I loved that interview with Brianna. There's a number of things that really stood out for me. The first one was giving yourself permission. Even when problems arise, allowing yourself to grieve and to process is important. So giving yourself permission, I think, was one of the key points of this whole interview, was to make sure that you don't just sit in guilt and shame, but you actually give yourself permission to move on, to take the learnings, and to really help move you forward. I think the other thing that stood out for me around her whole 1 year movement was take action every day. So she's creating this movement where every day we do an action. We actually physically do something that takes us towards what it is we want to achieve. And I think those 2 takeaway points are absolutely key.